Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining MassChallenge Texas this afternoon. My name is Mike Millar, the Managing Director for MassChallenge Texas in Austin. In honor of Veterans Day, we put together a wonderful event featuring our partners in the defense industry. Not only are our panelists experts in their fields, but many of our panelists today are also veterans themselves. Thank you for your service. We've created this event because we've come across so many early stage companies and startups that have great innovative ideas, but are unsure of how to navigate this particular safety and security market. And after joining this particular panel session, we hope you walk away with a better understanding of how to work with organizations such as MITRE, AFWorks, BAE, the Defense Innovation Unit, and the Department of Homeland Security. So let's get started. But first, next slide. I'd like to say thank you to all of our wonderful civic and corporate partners. Without their support, we couldn't do what we do, so we're very grateful for them. Round of applause. Yes. Next slide. Oh, I think you skipped to the next one. Go to the gift card one. Go one slide back. There we go. This is the fun stuff. So to keep you guys engaged, Melissa Junkins, our moderator, will be awarding a $25 gift card to the person that asked the best question of the day. So stay tuned to make sure you ask those questions in the Zoom chat. You can win $25 gift card from Melissa. Next, if you want to stay, next slide, if you want to stay in the know with all things MassChallenge, make sure you follow us on Facebook or Twitter and subscribe to our newsletter at masschallenge.org. And next, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker and panelist, Bobby Blunt Jr. He is the corporation's Cyber Operations Division Strategic Engagement and Innovation Lead for MITRE. And today he will be talking about why the defense industry needs the innovation and creativity that startups bring. Welcome, Bobby.
Good. Thank you, Mike. And thank you to MassChallenge Texas. I mean, this conversation could not be more timely in terms of the challenges that we're facing across our nation and the need for innovation and small businesses engagement. We need everybody's help with those challenges that we're facing. And I know today we're focusing on the defense, and I'm looking forward to also hearing from our panelists. And I hope that we provide you the information to get you not only inspired to help out, but to realize that you really can have an impact and could really be involved in this particular industry. And once again, that you are definitely needed. Let me also pass on my thank you to my fellow veterans out there, starting with those that from the Army. Next, we'll go to the Navy, and notice I'm doing this in a special order. Our Marines that actually have a special holiday for them, that's tomorrow. Our Air Force, and now our newest, our Space Force also. To say thank you for the service, I think you all know it's just putting it too lightly for what you have done and what you continue to do also. And I think we sort of also realize, in parallel to thanking our veterans, there are so many others that we've given thanks to you across the board. And I'm going to relate that to the conversation and what we're talking about today and how it overlaps. I think, you know, I'm talking about like our healthcare professionals, which are dealing with that challenge that we have with the COVID-19, our teachers and others, which are dealing with the educational type challenges that we're also facing, and those essential workers and others. I think the summary I'd really give out of that is we sort of realize that everybody in our nation, no matter who they are and what they may do, has value to the security of what we're trying to achieve in this great country of ours. And as a part of that, really to relate it to that topic, is we're seeing a lot of overlap in terms of what our needs are from the innovation side of the house, a lot of overlap in terms of what we need from our contractors and others that are working across the board. And when I say that, what I mean by in the sense of overlap is there's no longer this stovepipe. You know, in the past we say, okay, if you're defense, you're over here. If you're commercial, you're over here. If you're such and such, you say, oh, no. This world definitely overlaps. And that's why when we have solutions that may be applicable on the commercial side of the house, we know they're also applicable on the defense side of the house. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Just to give you an example of how important this is, stated last year, 2019, the Department of Defense alone spent $125 billion. Like, that's a little bit more than our gift cards, but $125 billion were for small businesses. And about 80 million of that was for those that had prime work, and about 40 something was those that did subcontracting type of work. And that's just the Department of Defense. I know that my company and others and some who are represented here in our panel today that we'll be discussing also are investing heavily within the small business community. And this is an increase. And I expect this continual increase to happen. And part of the reasons why, as I stated a little bit earlier, is that there is quite a bit of overlap. Some of this is quite obvious. We know that, for example, the global positioning satellite GPS, there's definitely commercial usage. We're using it in our cars, and others are using that particular services. And we know it's important to the Department of Defense also. That one's a little bit easier to see. IT, information technology type services, critical infrastructure protection, those we can sort of see. But some of the other things that others don't realize that we're also sharing, which definitely fits into our small businesses, and just to show you the vastness of it, is, for example, virtual reality. Virtual reality? Sure. Virtual reality, while it may be fun for gaming and other aspects that are going on, it's very, very critical today to our defense. And you'll see different ones are using that, whether it be pilots that are leveraging that for training purposes. Those technologies that are really, really all across the board with everybody are being utilized with our defense industry. And that's where we're saying, boy, small businesses and others can definitely help us out in those particular spaces. The other thing that we're seeing is we're seeing challenges on common type problems that overlap. And that overlap, for example, is we'll pick out one area. Let's say like supply chain. There's one area in Department of Defense that's very critical called supply chain risk management. I think you all know that the majority of our computer chips and other things come from one country in particular. So we've got to make sure that we have the proper protective measures, that our systems that we operate have the security and other aspects, and those reliable, that they're not somebody taking advantage of for economic type reasons, to sell us something a little bit cheaper that's not really that part that we needed, et cetera. So that one's a common one that we face not only in the defense side of the house, that we also face with all the different, anything that's using a chip nowadays as sort of a common type of problem. But one thing that we also realize that small businesses help out in that particular space, and as a real good example that's used a lot, supply chain also involves using parts that others may not have, that you have to have very special expertise or very knowledge on, whether it be for some of our older aircraft, older radar systems, et cetera. And some of our small businesses have really set up great processes and really have gathered a really good understanding in those particular space. So while a lot of times we talk about technical type aspects, et cetera, what we realize is there's a lot of opportunities when you're helping out defense that cover a lot of different ground that we need the support in, and that we also need the help in. The other one I like to talk about a lot is we say things are at the edge. And as we think more and more, literally going out to the edge, we don't just have the old large computer system that's standing up in a particular background. We all have that computer system right at our hip right now. The cell phone that we may have, or the mobile device that we may have, et cetera, has as much power as anything else nowadays. And as we see in that being utilized more out there with individuals in their daily type livelihood, et cetera, and we know that there are a number of small businesses, new ideas, new programs, new things that are coming along to benefit them. But we sort of said, wait a minute, Department of Defense, the defense industry also is leveraging that technology, and it's also beneficial to them. So some of those things that you may be doing that may be, it's a small little program. Well, no, actually what you're doing is going to be beneficial to some how the defense is also using things at the edge, et cetera. Another good example that we talk about is when you're talking about drones and unmanned type systems, et cetera. Very popular, very demanding, et cetera. And when you just look at the amount of technology and other things that are associated with a drone itself, there's a lot of opportunities that require a lot of different expertise across the board that you need not one company to present those type of not only solutions, but can really provide the path, the way ahead for that, because that is a constantly changing technologies. There's all different kinds of usage, et cetera. But what a wide open space that we can really integrate not only small businesses, but all different types of corporations and involve our government folks and et cetera in those particular spaces. So those are some of the things I want to point out, is just to show you that interrelationship between commercial, defense, our daily lives are definitely all overlapping. So when you have ideals that you may come up with that, oh boy, this works in this environment, you're going to be amazed that, wait a minute, I hadn't thought about that, but this also could be advantageous on the defense side of the house also. I do want to point out one of the reasons why the small businesses have such great opportunity is because you're able to really focus in on a particular problem. You can find that, I hate to use the word niche, but I'm going to use that word. You can develop a special niche and really focus in particular areas that the defense and others really need expertise in. And as you know, in this world that we're facing today, part of that solution is really, can somebody really understand not only the initial aspect to it, but really do all the testing associated with it, do all the homework that's associated with it. And that's something that we find that small businesses really can really focus out and help out on within the defense industry as itself. As really giving a focus to a particular area and really seeing it all the way through. The other thing is you usually have some special knowledge because you're usually up front dealing with something very, very closely. For those that may have a prior military background, you may see something and say, man, I could make this a lot better if. Well, your if could be, hey, let's see that opportunity for you now to come on as a small business. And that problem you may solve on the logistics side of the house or on the technical side of the house, whatever it may be, you as a small business can really address that and see it through, not only because you can go forward the technology, but you know how it was used in that so-called real world operationally and all the other things that are sort of surrounding it across the board. I will motivate everybody to let you know that not only is the Department of Defense, but my company, for example, the MITRE Corporation, we're big into innovation as a whole. And all of us are trying to find ways to make it a lot easier for our small businesses. And this is the engagement part. You know, right now the statistics show, and you all may know this, that it takes about from start to when you finally get your first contract, it had been averaged out to 18 months. And believe me, all the different entities, whether you be a contractor, Department of Defense, other type partners are saying, we've got to do better than that. We've got to accelerate that, et cetera. So you'll see a number of focus on changing legal policies, local policies, regulations, so that we can accelerate so those small businesses, which, you know, the finance are going to be really critical up front, can engage across the board a lot faster. You also find there's a lot of efforts to help out in your intellectual property protection, to make sure that that invention or that idea that you have is fully protected. So you'll see the defense as well as some of your contractors and other partners making a very big effort to say, hey, we want to make sure that that small business IP is properly protected because that's the value that they're bringing. And we want everybody to recognize, hey, we're going to take care of you now, but we're also going to take care of you in the future. And even some other things. My area of expertise happens to be in cybersecurity. And we realize that those that go in the defense space and get the security type work or security type clearances don't always have all the checklist items taken care of when it comes to cybersecurity. So you'll see a big effort by within the government and other entities to help you out in that particular space. So I bring that up in this light to say that not only are there opportunities there for you to join in this particular world, but there's all kinds of different mechanisms and all kinds of support because we are all recognizing the value that small business is bringing forth. And the last item I'll sort of close out with just a couple of suggestions. And I'm sure our panels will have a couple more also. You know, if you really want to get involved in this space, I encourage you first to, as they say, follow the money. You know, there are a number of directives, a number of other things out there that not only Department of Defense, but major contractors and others that you'll hear about to say, hey, this year, this is what we're looking for. This is what we're going to fund for, et cetera. The other thing I'd encourage you to is to register yourself, identify yourself. Say, hey, I want to get in this business. There's a number of different type of entities that you can call on, associate with you on the small business side of the house that'll definitely help you out. Each of the different services have their contact. I know my company, we even have a bridging innovation contact. There are people you can talk to that will help you along and provide for you in this particular space. And the last thing I'll point out is we need you. I'll go back to my very beginning statement. You know, there's so much overlap. Our national security now is really dependent on us all working together, and that we bring forth the very best that we can to solve these different challenges that we face. And to me, small business is the key to do that. So I thank again, MassChallenge, and thanks for letting me say a few words.
Okay, technical glitch. Welcome, Monday. So recap. Thank you, Bobby, once again for speaking. Thank you, everyone, for being able to participate on this Monday afternoon. My name is Melissa Junkins, and I'm the Partnerships Account Manager here at MassChallenge in Texas. And I am going to go ahead and introduce our panel. Let's please meet the panel. For some of you folks who have just trickled in, we do have Bobby from MITRE Corporation. Bobby, if you can take just one more minute to kind of give a brief overview of who you are and where you're from, and we'll go on to the rest of our folks. And we got you on mute, Bobby.
All right, here we go. We'll try that again. Again, my name is Bobby Blunt again. I'm actually here in San Antonio, Texas with the MITRE Corporation. And I am in charge of our cyber operations innovation opportunities across the nation, where we're looking to engage with partners such as MassChallenge and small businesses, et cetera. I'm also in charge of our engagement with universities and looking for new technology opportunities. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you. Next, we have Cliff Colbert from the Defense Innovation Unit. Welcome, Cliff.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Melissa. Cliff Colbert, I'm a commercial engagement executive with the Defense Innovation Unit. We're obviously officed out of Silicon Valley and Boston. I live in Texas, but happy to be on the panel. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Defense Innovation Unit, we're a group that's focused on partnering with commercial technology companies to accelerate that technology for the benefit of the Department of Defense and current problem sets that we're trying to solve. So looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ormal with the United States Department of Homeland Security. Welcome, Ormal.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Playing the Sesame Street game, one of these is not like the other. I really appreciate being part of this discussion. You know, Department of Homeland Security, obviously security is in the title, but sometimes, you know, we trail behind tremendously the Department of Defense. So a lot of what I will share is from my perspective. I'm currently a contract support providing advice and counsel for the Science and Technology Directorate at the Department of Homeland Security. And just for everyone's awareness, the Science and Technology Directorate is the research and development arm for big DHS. So a lot of the innovation programs kind of sit there. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Matthew Scott with AFWorks. Welcome, Matthew.
Afternoon, Matthew Scott, AFWorks, and I'm originally from Austin, Texas, and I'm part of the original AFWorks crew up to 3 years ago. Starting out, I opened up AFWorks Austin, and I'm also a member of the core team that started the AF Ventures SBIR process in June of 2018 as well. So I'm a program manager with there. And really AFWorks, we're positioning it, recently went under a reorg, but we are positioning it as that front door for non-traditional companies. And I can explain on that a little bit later. Non-traditional companies looking to do business with the Air Force. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Gil Gonzalez from BAE Systems. Welcome, Gil.
Hi, thank you for having me. Happy Veterans Day coming up for all those veterans out there. One thing I want to tell you is, you know, I've been working in the defense industry for over 30 years, partly in uniform and out of uniform. I've had a number of adventures along the way. Today I'm at BAE Systems. I'm in Austin, Texas. I love it here in Austin. It's sunny. It's awesome. Love the music. Can't wait to get out there and see some live music again. But I work with within the tech scouting group here at BAE, and you know, our focus is on looking external for that technology that BAE has interest in. And so all those small companies out there, medium companies, anything that's external technology to BAE, hey, you know, we are a connection for you. Okay, so just want you to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Gil. Okay, well, let's go ahead and dive in, shall we? First, again, just like to express Happy Veterans Day to all of my brothers and sisters in arms out there. So happy early Veterans Day. Let's start with the first question that I've heard quite often from individuals that I've worked with in the startup space. So I'll just start with that for everyone. Do you feel that innovation itself is a problem within the Department of Defense? Or do you feel that implementing new innovative technology and ideas is the problem? So if we can just gather some thoughts on that topic, who would like to start?
I'll kick it
All
off.
right, let's go, Matthew.
Oh, go ahead, Matt.
I'll keep it short, Cliff. Yeah, so one of the things when we first started AFWorks that we recognized that a problem, and we took a little bit different aspect from, say, DIU or some of these other organizations, is we found it to be a cultural issue with the Air Force. So AFWorks actually started out as a cultural experimentation. So the Secretary of the Air Force, Secretary Wilson at the time, and the Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General Wilson, really wanted to push innovation down to the lowest level possible and to give a voice to every airman in the Air Force, and to actually that voice to be heard, and their pain points really vocalized and acted on. And that's really what AFWorks has focused on these past 3 years. And we're now transitioning to linking up those voices to actually pathways to acquisition and strategic alignment at the Air Force level, those pathways to actually transition those technologies over. So we're still at our core focusing internally, execution, cultural. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of mention, I think innovation at scale with consistency is really what the Department of Defense is trying to implement. And, that's no different than any other large organization, I think, on earth, right? You look at Shell and Exxon and Chevron and how they're trying to innovate across their corporate entities. The Department of Defense is facing that. And so I think, when you look at when creative technology is discovered or identified or funded, the next question right after that is, can you make 500,000 of them, right? And most startups aren't necessarily in a place to do that. And so I think it's on organizations like ours to try to connect the dots and either help scale, or on the other end with the end customer being the Air Force, Marine Corps, Navy, Army, et cetera, is to define innovation for them and be that bridge across the spectrum. And I think that's how we actually get ideas and innovation at the broadest level across the department, as well as get those incremental wins along the way.
Melissa, if I may, from the DHS perspective, there's two major things that, from my experience anyways, that we've seen is one, identifying solutions. So when I say that, to Matthew's point about the non-traditional partners, where is innovation happening, right? That's just a generic question that we ask ourselves all the time. Once we identify it, how do we access it? So again, I'm gonna give Matthew a pat on the back. I was blown away, and again, we're DHS, we're trying to learn. When I saw the AFWorks pitch day, and we were just like, wow, how cool is this? Now let's assess our carrots, if you will, and figure out, if this is my target audience, how can I make these look better or more attractive so that I can get some of those, innovative startups and things of that like. So just a little from the DHS perspective.
Great. Okay. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, this is Gil. I agree with all that. One of the things I want to point out is you're also looking at an evolution from, historically, the way the acquisition model runs with the DoD tended to be slow and long, right? So now we're taking actions to try to accelerate that and move that a little faster. And that also means that some of those acquisition models will change and shift. And just like Bobby had mentioned earlier about potential policy changes for accelerating contracting, right? So those things have to happen and take place for us to get there and help.
Great. Okay. As for some of us, as former veterans that have, obviously served in the armed forces, it's hard to make that transition going from military world, military life, how do we go and dive into this new civilian world that we now have to engage with and be a part of? And sometimes the answer is, hey, why not start my own business? Okay, seems simple. So for those of us who are veteranpreneurs or just simply early stage startups, how would you suggest that they begin establishing these key relationships, both in the private industries and within the military sectors? Do you have any advice for that? How do we get there?
I'll start on that one, Melissa. So I would say one of the first things to let people know is you have to socialize. You've got to get out there. You've got to meet people. And it seems a little more challenging today. But we have tools out there to leverage. So socialize. Identify the influencers that you need to connect with. Okay, so that's a key thing. Find the influencers who can help you as a startup or as a small business, present your capabilities. Don't be shy, but be professional, right? So, the answer is no until somebody says yes, right? So learn that one from my wife. Get them talking about their perspectives and listen to them, right? So as a small business or a startup, don't come swinging into the conversation with, I got this great idea and I want to sell it to you now. Listen to get them talking about their perspectives. They'll talk about their problems, maybe, right? They'll and then you guys can explore that space together and see if there's a good fit, right? And keep in mind, both of your times are valuable. So focus on value add discussions, okay? As much as possible, right? There's a little other socializing that goes on in there, but focus on what you're trying to do. And like I said before, don't try to force the sale up front. Get to know folks and understand how you fit.
Great, thank you, Gil. Yes, listen to your wife. That's good advice. Works in my household. Would anybody else like to touch on that?
Yeah, I'll just add one other quick item, because that was a good summary that was given. The other thing is really do your homework, literally. I mean, it may not be crazy about it, but make sure you know the federal acquisition regulation. Make sure you know the national defense strategy, the other documentation and other things. So that's another element that can help out greatly in addition to the socializing and contact part of it. But there's a lot of research and homework that can be done up front. I think it'll help you out with your decision making also.
And I think, I think more than the military, I think the civilian and corporate sector functions more as this kind of philosophy of you can't push a rope. You have to be pulled into opportunities, whether internally in a corporation or also in the funding cycle. So I challenge entrepreneurs to stay close to the problem set, because you can't necessarily qualify yourself into solving the problem that doesn't exist, because it needs to be funded and you need to be pulled through the supply chain of it happening, right? So the closer you are to the problem set and being able to solve the problem how the end customer has defined it, whether that's in the corporate America or in the Department of Defense, I think the more people will listen to your ideas versus just an open topic, which we do, that definitely exists, especially with the SIPR process, and R&E and labs are set up to fill those types of situations. But if you're a company, you're trying to make payroll too, right? So in order to meet those financial metrics and the economics of being able to be viable, it's probably in your benefit to focus on near-term opportunities, and those near-term opportunities are defined by problem sets of the end customer.
I'll expand it from my point of view. This is actually a very dear topic to myself of a transitioning veteran, but I'll put it through the lens of if you've already transitioned and you have a business and you're trying to get into, that's what AFWorks and what AFVentures is all about. It's if you are a small business and small business meaning below 500 people, hey, come apply for the SBIR process. That is our first, what we call phase one, is you talking to end users. That's what you're getting paid to do for 3 months. Also, we have AFWorks challenges. though, if you engage in those opportunities, you can start networking, as some of the other panelists had said, and really articulating your problem. I would also keep an open mind, and I'll just take the liberty of telling a quick story, is I have dealt with thousands of companies since, early 2018 with these SBIR. And say you're a robotics company, they came in and I introduced them to an airman, a unit that did maintenance. And this company wanted to drill rivets, and they're like, hey, we have this cool robotic stuff trying to drill rivets. And the airmen were like, oh, cool, man, if I just had a robot to wash my jet. And he's like, that's easy. And lo and behold, they get $1 million contract to figure out how to wash an F-16, because an F-16 goes off the flight line for 3 days and 5 people to wash a plane. And that takes away from sortie generation. So it's keep an open mind in these conversations and try and think of use cases. Thank you.
And washing in between sorties would be tough. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add on this particular topic? Okay, move on we go. So for some of us, we're trying to engage the land of cybers and trying to wrap our minds around what in the heck is that? How do we do it? How do we start? Who do we talk to? I went to the website. I can't figure it out. These are common things that I have heard. So while solicitations and RFPs can be difficult to navigate for a startup new to this defense environment, what steps would you recommend and/or processes for a startup to follow in an effort to have their ideas move forward and just simply be heard? Do you have any insider tips to offer for any of us today?
This is Matthew. I'll go ahead and go quick. What I've seen best with companies, and I do apologize, it's so difficult to do business sometimes with the Department of Defense. The way that the Air Force, we are, I'll tell you one thing that frustrates startups is that we change a lot of our RFPs and how we do it very often. But that's actually a benefit to you all, because we're hearing your input and trying to change the process along the way. What we have stabilized on currently, and it still will change for 2021.1, but we have weekly calls now with companies. So what I would suggest is best practices: get the solicitation, read it, go to a call, ask any questions, then go to the website, and the afworks.af.mil website has a step process, and then start working your way through the steps. And then if you run into a problem, the next week, go to that Ask Me Anything, and you have the people that are working the process. And you can just keep doing that weekly to weekly, and then sending emails. That's what I've best seen.
Okay, Matthew, we'll be stalking you later for that information. Does anybody else want to touch on this topic?
Yeah, so Melissa, I'll add to that. In addition, I would go back to also a comment that Secretary England had said just recently, is find a prime to work with, right? So I'm a little biased in that, right? I want those small companies to reach out to us, because what happens is, it's not just that the technology they have may be useful alone, but we can look at how to integrate that technology with what we're doing inside and create something that is even more beneficial to our customers within the DoD. So, and the other thing is, we can help them to cross that valley of death for technology, right? So that's one of the challenges for small companies and startups. And I mean, it's such a challenge that you look at Naval X, and they set up their bridges, right? So I'm looking for a high five from Mohawk Matt on that one, by the way. And so they've done that purposely because of that problem, right? And they're not the only ones. I mean, AFWorks is doing their activities, and others are working at this also. But reaching out to us and looking at how we can partner, how we can join our technologies together to solve problems is one of those ways.
Yeah, and I just follow up with on Gil's. And from our standpoint, from MITRE and our operating our federally funded research and development centers, what we want to do is help find solutions that you may have and introduce those over to the government side. So it's a little bit different than a partnering type of aspect. But what we actually try to do is, that's why one reason why we serve as a mentor for MassChallenge with corporations, with some of the small businesses and some of the other roles, to say, oh, here's a good idea that could be beneficial to the government. It could also be beneficial to another contractor. And you can sort of use us as sort of a sounding board. And at times we'll bring people in and test it out in some of our labs and some other things too. So remember, you have the government side of the house, you have the contractor side of the house, and our type of roles. So don't be afraid to call on any of us to help out too.
If I could just add something as well, Melissa, one of the things that I want to echo what Bobby had mentioned earlier was that, at least for the startups that I interact with, you have to know the FAR-based system. As wonky as it is, you have to know the SAM.gov system, right? And that just comes with time. The more you use it, the more you get comfortable knowing what keywords. And the other point about the FAR, whatever, is that like someone like me who's on the inside who works with startups and has some insight as to what the broader DHS is looking for. If you submit an application because you want to get in front of the line and you've entered your information into portal, I can no longer help you, right? Or the other resources that we've all mentioned, kind of the active management of these contacts that you are able to work. If you have anybody that has any kind of an awareness of it, you automatically lose that whole resource pool. So, I always kind of encourage people to, get used to the system, understand what they're asking for, look for who's asking for what, do a little bit of that research to get more information. The information is pretty much out there, as Matthew put, and start to develop your plan. And I love that push a rope. I'm going to have to use that, Cliff. Thank you for that. But it's exactly right. You have to understand the problem, or you're not going to get anywhere once you get into a room with somebody. So there's a whole lot of stuff. But the main thing is that active communication with whoever you can it will do you wonders before you submit an application or submit a proposal.
All right, great, thank you. So some of you have already touched on this, but I want to bring it to light. Are there any common trends or errors that either of you see from your perspective from startups that are attempting to get into this industry? Maybe something that they're not doing that's preventing them from having their ideas move forward?
Yeah, this is Matthew. I want to make a quick comment because one of the things I see, and this is the hard part, and this is also a part on the Air Force that we don't do a good job of describing how to treat the Air Force as a market. But my experience, because I actually have worked with startups, and usually as a startup, you want to go to who has the checkbook at the highest level. That's actually, starting out in the Air Force is not the way to do it in the way that we're setting it up. Instead of treating it as an enterprise sales type market, I would treat it as a customer-based market and keep it a little bit lower. And one of the mistakes is you find your first customer or your first stakeholder to sign your MOU, and then you stop talking to people. And that's not what you want to get. You want to get as many customers to send that demand signal up to the person with the checkbook high in the Air Force to say, okay, this is a emerging requirement that we need to figure out how to solve. And then they'll start connecting you to a program officer or connecting you to someone that has a line of accounting to build that in a 2-year pathway. So I would sum that up by saying, treat it as a customer-based sales where you're just trying to go as many customers and keep it at a lower level, at least initially.
Everything has an opportunity cost, and I challenge startups to, don't necessarily put all their eggs in one basket. If their technology can be applied to healthcare like it can be to defense, you obviously have to have focus as you approach a market, right? Because you're making those trade-offs as a startup. But, I think from the Defense Innovation Unit perspective, the more you can develop your commercial technology, the that's another way to elevate that demand signal at the highest level within the department. You know, if for example, if Red Hat is solving a problem in a non-traditional way, and you know they just signed on American Airlines, you know, maybe we'll look at that from an aviation perspective as Department of Defense too, right? You know, so I think the grassroots effort that Matt's talking about, that's definitely a great way to get your advocacy at the table, because it gets elevated from table to table, from wardroom to wardroom. But also, you know, what comes up in those conversations is, well, who's doing this now outside? And so the more you can develop that commercial acumen and story, in addition with the grassroots effort Matt's talking about, I think you're kind of triangulating on an opportunity.
Great. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think one of the major issues when we run into startups is and you kind of heard it across the board here, which is lack of preparation, or also sometimes, you know, when we ask the question, who's your competitor? That's not a bad question. That's not, you know, that doesn't show you're weak if you have a competitor, right? It's almost sometimes they're gauging your knowledge base of where you're working, right? So like, do you understand that you have other competitors? That kind of a thing too. So, you know, being able to answer questions genuinely and you know, when you're a hammer in search of a nail, sometimes that sticks out when you get into those rooms, right? So, you know, just understanding the problem, understanding what your technology does well and what it doesn't do well, and kind of being open to that collaborative discussion, if you will.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just follow up real quick with
Yes, Bobby.
the competitor one. I like that because the other thing we're going to ask, remember, and we get too technical at times, I'm sorry, we're going to ask you, why are you advantage your competitor? You know, what's the difference between you and your competitor? We need that answer, et cetera. Absolutely. And the only other thing I would add is just, and it's a little bit harder, but when you are discussing and talking about it, you know, remember the other side, one is the cost, schedule, performance side of it. So great idea, everything else, but okay, what does that mean to me per se in our particular environment? So sometimes that's also lacking.
Yep.
So a common question that I personally have received during my office hours with startups is the following. Is there opportunity for investment or acquisition from these organizations such as yourselves? And what can we tell startups who want to be in the DoD space to expect when it comes to having a conversation with people like yourselves? You know, what can we tell them to expect there?
So Melissa, I'll mention something very briefly. I would say first thing to expect is really look for partnerships, right? That's kind of the first thing, right? Because you're going to find a broader ability to bring technology in and leverage it. From an M&A perspective, you know, M&A tends to be high cost and high risk, and so you know, larger companies and organizations have to think much more about that, and it takes a long time for that too. So I would say go in thinking, how do we work together? That's really the way you want to go. That I would suggest they come into the conversation, and then everything else can kind of evolve from there.
Yeah, this is Matthew. For speaking with AFWorks, I want to, you know, emphasize what Gil was saying about AFWorks is going hard on public-private partnerships, and one of our initiatives, you may have heard what's called Agility Prime, and it's called the Prime Program. And with that Agility Prime, people think flying cars. That it's more than that. It's when the Air Force recognizes a market that we need to really invest dollars in. For instance, when the drone market came out, DJI controlled, you know, 90% of the market. Well, we said, well, we need that next layer. We need to control that next layer, eVTOL at shorter distances. And so it's actually an agility to resupply in austere locations, and it's creating that whole market. The Prime program is when it's going to take that market and create all the partnerships that you need. So the technology, the integrator with the DoD Prime, maybe a startup with, for instance, with the flying cars doesn't need money, but they need access to accelerated FAA licensing. Well, we have that relationship in the Air Force to get you that kind of accelerated licensing. So that's what we're looking for in the future, is how to partner with all the players and cost share it when necessary.
I think that's a great point, Matt and Gil made. You know, when we look at the competitive landscape, not company to company, but service to service, country to country, who our asymmetrical adversaries are, you know, they operate in a vertically aligned autocratic system, right? So, you know, I think M&A is actually counter to probably what we're trying to do in our ecosystem, is create a wide range of innovation and access to that innovation, not trying to control or take custody of it, like some of our competitors are doing. When I say our competitors, I mean everybody that's on this phone call, right? You know, so China, Russia, et cetera, Iran, are really who, at the end of the day, we're preparing somebody to go up against those people.
Thank you. I will say this is the first time I've ever seen so many great questions being asked on an event like this. So in an effort to have everyone heard, my last question for you all at this time is, you know, is there anything that we haven't really talked about, or, you know, anything that's burning that you want these startups to know at this point? This is our opportunity. Throw it out there, rapid fire.
Yeah, there's one I have in mind, Melissa, and I kind of want to bring it about is think about reverse innovation. Okay, so typically what happens is, in an innovation environment, folks are looking at how much capability can I pack in, versus maybe taking the approach of, in some cases, taking the approach of what capability can I develop now for those who have limited resources, okay? Because then you're going to find that even those that have significant resources can leverage that also at times. And then you evolve your product or your service in a way to increase the capability. And that could help that startup generate revenue earlier on in their life cycle, right? So, and as part of that, don't just say, hey, I'm going to jump to reverse innovation. Actually do a good market research, study the market, understand what you're targeting, what your product is supporting, what gap are you filling, how are you differentiating from the competition, understand your competition. Lay down a strategy for growth for your company, and then put all your resources into executing that strategy, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket, like was mentioned earlier, but ensure you have a strategy that is realistic and speaks to growth, and execute that.
That's well said, Gil. It made me think when we were talking about competitors and know your competitors, right? And I think back to some conversations where startups have told me they don't have competitors because they're that new into the market, and it's a big red flag, right? Because if you don't have competitors, maybe the market's not worth going into, right? Just something to consider. Thought I'd share that part. But look forward to the questions.
And Melissa,
And I just want to throw out real quick, don't be afraid to collaborate among each others within the startup. So I will tell you, in this space, even everybody that's on this BAE, EHS, Adware, all of us, we all realize we kind of collaborate in this world nowadays. So don't be afraid to collaborate among each other too.
I love that point that Bobby just made. That's one of the things that we look at also, is it's not just one company, one technology looking to pull in. We're also looking at how do you connect a number of these companies to create a capability that then we can carry and help get to our DoD customers.
and if I could piggyback off that too, one thing to also keep in mind is, dual use purposes for technology. So, coming again from a non-DoD perspective, there's a lot of stuff that I joke all the time that I wish I had the dumbed down version of what DoD had, because it would really help us, right? So what you're working on, that you have that as the market would apply to DHS, We have frontline responders, CBP, Coast Guards, and DHS. And then if you take that a step further, first responders in general have a lot of similar needs as well. So just something to think about. Always be thinking of that dual purpose, I think.
Yes.
One last, I just have to make a plug just for, for the sake of my AFWorks is, if it can be overwhelming on who to talk to as a startup. You don't know who to go to, a lot of information. You feel like you have to talk to everyone. You don't have limited resources. At the bare minimum, if just engage with the Air Force through SBIR or the challenges, because once you get through that door, we know and talk to all the individuals on this call. So if we feel like, hey, you have a good fit for the Army or the Air or the Navy or someone, we'll connect you for you. So don't feel like you initially have to talk to everyone and use up all your resources. Thanks.
Good points. Good points. All right, Ormal, I'm putting you on the hot seat. We have a great question. Thanks again, everyone, for your input. So this question is for you, Ormal.
All right.
Does DHS plan to use more frequently the OTA process so that there would not be as many constraints in communication?
That's a great question. Let me just remind everybody that I'm a contract advisor at DHS, so everything I say is my opinion. So some of our components use it really well. So TSA uses it really well. The science and technology director where I sit, we're now looking at it and analyzing it. We do have certain capabilities already for it. It's not being fully used. But again, as these discussions go on and as we're meeting DoD folks and realizing, that's definitely one of the carrots, if you will, that I mentioned earlier that we're looking at. So absolutely.
Great, thank you. Second question. Some of us are immigrants, became permanent residents and or citizens. Given the current technology, innovation, talent pool, geopolitical dynamics, and the increasing importance on security for defense applications, any advice on how DoD and leading defense contractors can create an easier or more efficient environment and process to engage startups with various backgrounds while not relaxing in any way on the security clearance requirements? Lastly, it says, for example, create non-classified contracts such that we startups can still work on the R&D while not necessarily exposed to the classified aspects. Is this feasible? I can repeat anything you need me to. That was a long one.
Yeah, so Melissa, I'll take a shot at that one. So, green card holders and such, we do work with. So it's not a, I wouldn't say it's a, I would say it's not a major issue, right? We do look for things like foreign investment and such, right? So, and, from particular places, right? So, those are some of the things we look at, but I would less worry about, we want diverse thinking and, folks from diverse backgrounds proposing solutions. And so we're open to that. All this will just kind of come out in part of the due diligence that we do with a startup to understand their business and the connections that they have. So it's kind of a little bit of a vague answer, but it's a case by case basis. So I would say, unless you're, unless you're Chinese citizen and you've got a company that's in China, that's going to be challenging for us, right? But otherwise, have the conversation, see where it goes.
I think the partnership comments earlier are really important, right? To not go down that path alone. DIU, for example, we have non-classified problem sets. So, on one hand, we make it easier to do business that way, but it's a problem that's already defined, right? So you have to have a pretty mature technology to be applied at scale, which would be kind of our limiting factor. But if you do have that, we can generally get around nationality concerns pending it's not an adversary nationality concern. And partnering with people like Gil and Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and the others help kind of solidify your technology and where it could fit in the potential ecosystem too.
Yeah, it's Matthew. I just wanted to comment to say I wouldn't so much single it out to say classified and being, card holder as a separate process. You're going through the same process of vetting as a US citizen, and that process in the Air Force is a struggle right now. Like that's one of the biggest problems we're facing is how to get people to start doing classified work. And all signs are are pointing towards, hey, you have to be partnered with a prime to help with that integration because they have that figured out. So that's the way forward of working with primes that, will provide more messaging. But I wouldn't really, as far as doing unclassified work, it's a very minimal case issue in the Air Force. It's not going to be much of a problem. If for everyone, it's a problem if you want to try and do classified work right now.
Okay, next question. Have your budgeting cycles been made more flexible so that startups can survive while building products for the government? Most startups can't wait for a decade-long legislative policy and or long drawn-out approval processes.
This is Matthew. I'll just quickly touch on what we're setting up, and it'll sort of make sense about when you hear all these terms on what we're doing with our processes. So, trying to change Congress, I think we all realize that's difficult to do. So what we have done to try and alleviate some of those issues is we've set up a roadmap for phase 1s and phase 2s that will get you about 2 years worth of runway. And then you'll hear something called TACFI. It's basically just tactical financing, which you can increase that timeline, increase further R&D budgeting. And then you'll hear what's called StratFi, the strategic finance. That's actually going to be released this week in RFI. And that can bring an additional up to 4 years. So that gives you, 6 years of runway while the program offices figure out how to palm out and get the money on the back end of that 6 years to transition to an office. And the way that we do that are under those prime categories that we're going to create. For instance, in December, we're going to launch about 6 new primes on space, microelectronics, maybe energy, so a whole swath of areas. So if you align with those and you're working your way towards the StratFis, you're going to be able to buy yourself time. Also, just one last thing, we have something called Air Force Finance that's going to be announced in December, and that's a direct lending program to sort of bridge finance some of these companies in between some of the financing hurdles.
That's some great news there, Matthew. Thank you for sharing that. Next question. Is it a good idea for a first-time applicant to the SBIR to work with a skilled grant writer?
I'll only speak for AFWERX SBIR because that's one of the misunderstandings that people have. They think SBIR is a federal initiative program by Congress. So everyone has an SBIR program that has the traditional requirements. For Air Force AFWERX dual open topic, I would say the answer is no. But that's only speaking for us.
Listen, if I could tack on to that too. So, and I agree. So like, if you have a comfort level with the process, you don't need help. It becomes an issue. I've never written one. I don't even know what needs to be in there. And if you're at a startup at that level, I think it is important to get an understanding of it. I'm not saying that you should pay for it. I'm just saying you should be aware of what goes into it. Because it is important to have it. A lot of our processes, again, I'm speaking from what I've seen at DHS here, is that if one or two things is off, it's going to get kicked out, whether or not your technology is awesome or not, So it's just very important to make sure that everything is in there correctly. So again, I'm not saying that you should pay for it, but you should definitely have an awareness of it.
Thank you. Let's see, next question. How can we find out about risk reduction effort or other prototype contracts with the DoD?
Risk reduction. I guess I'll take a swing at that. I think everybody has an outlet to solving problems that's on the phone. So whether that's the SIBR open topic or direct open pitch days, or DIU has open solicitations that are frequently posted on our website and updated, or kind of Bobby earlier, the national defense strategy will kind of lead you into, what the overall topic is that's trying to be solved, and how to best engage on a topical level.
Yeah,
So-
the only thing I would say, I would add to that, to what Cliff was saying is, and I would phrase it in the terms shots on goal. I would just take as many shots on goal as in these events through all these innovation organizations that are out there. And also from another way that internally the Air Force mitigates is for like SBIR 20.3 that's just closed out, we're going to anticipate putting 300 plus contracts. So we're trying to get many out there as possible to generate, with the expectation that they're not going to all get phase twos. And that's not the goal. It's to see, what is out there that we don't know.
It's a really great question, which I meant to touch on and didn't get a chance to. Can you tell us how frequently the Ask Me Anythings occur, and any other list of resources that you can maybe provide to us today?
Well, the SBA has everything you need to know in regulation galore on SBIR, and then some of the FAR-based regulations, just tons of stuff. But to make sense of a lot of that, AFWERX has a weekly call. So literally every week, and that can be found on afwerx.af.mil. That website, it'll have an AMA, and that's every week. And you just ask these questions, and then you'll get email addresses, and then you can ask the email address, send an email to those addresses to ask questions, and people will get back to you eventually to answer some of that.
Okay, another question. Is it easier to get into a government contract by applying through an existing vendor?
I wouldn't say it's easier.
Yeah.
It's gonna depend on the situation. It really is. Some of those are set up where their technology can be pulled in, and in some cases they're going to find that their technology is directly applicable, and they can get a contract and move forward.
And we are still filtering through some questions. Bear with me. Okay, I'm probably going to chop this up, but I'm going to do the best that I can because I personally have never heard of it. Is a small business mentor program, and then in parentheses, they write, I think it was called non-peri, still operative? If so, what is the difference with this SBIR program of AFWERX and the non-peri? Probably for you, Matthew. I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, I would have to do some research on non-peri. If you could probably, I will say this though, for even with, AFWERX, AFRL, Air Force Research Lab, that's SBIR program falls under, because AFWERX technically falls under AFRL now too. There are free programs, free offices that you can approach throughout the US to get information and help on how to write some of these that are at apply and what it means and how to fill out the application. You can get all that free information and free help. So I would have to research the specific program, so I apologize.
No worries. We can always follow up with an email or something. It's a good question. bear with me. Let's see here. Oh, he says, so what he meant by that was Sam Nunn, senator from Georgia. That's what was meant by that. Okay. Yeah, I think we'd still need to do a little bit of research on that before we can give a very clear and precise response. Okay, so another question we have with regard to DoD or U.S. Air Force operations that small businesses could look at. Is there a list, a place for people to go to find these opportunities? Matthew, earlier you had mentioned an issue with washing jets. It would be good to get some insight into the top cost items or top safety items and processes that these institutions are trying to solve, or perhaps where they may have these opportunities listed. This person also indicates that if they heard correctly, we can talk to the panel members about opportunities to apply to.
Yeah, just on the AFWORKS side, if you go to afworks.if.mil, the website, there's what's called focus areas. That's going to be retermed to called mission areas. But for instance, there's 173 items listed. And then there's other lists that we have listed that have 500 problem areas. So everything that we're trying to put as a funnel to that website that lists out all the pain points from a strategic level, that's more throughout the Air Force. If you want a strategic level, more of an enterprise level, I would look at the problem sets that the Prime program is going after. So in December, we have an event that we're going to announce, as I mentioned earlier, Prime initiatives and problem sets within those Prime initiatives. Those are sanctioned top down that says this is what the Air Force wants to go after. And that can help you out there.
You know, I was just going to add the second part of the question. I have no problem with anybody contacting me. Mine's really easy. Just my initials, bb@miter.org. And I'll help out at least from a MITRE angle in any other way I can.
Listen, I wanted to also piggyback off of Matthew's comments from a DHS perspective. The Science and Technology Directorate has what we call, broad agency announcements. And then we have a portion of those that are called long range broad agency announcements. And so, again, you can pass my email out to anybody that would like more information on it. I can point you directly to it, but if you Google search it, it will take you right there. Those are the we don't know what we don't know type calls, right? So there's generally topic areas. And if you feel you have a technology in that area, you can, submit a white paper from there. So it's not the whole detailed thing. On top of that, I know we mentioned challenges. That's also something that DHS S&T does. So we recently had one with fentanyl detection. And so it's something that we will continue to do over the next year or so. But we have a landing page for that as well. Again, if you should be able to Google search it. If not, I can definitely point people in the right direction.
Great. Yeah, and if there's any questions after today, don't hesitate to contact me, Melissa@masschallenge.org. And hopefully we can get some introductions made. Last question. In what ways are you seeing the remote work piece holding back collaborative efforts for companies to travel and participate in technology solution bake-offs, etc.?
If the panel doesn't mind, I'll go first.
Please.
This is something that I've been looking at pretty long and hard. Now, obviously, the challenges or the showcases that happen, those are all more difficult. But what I have found out that the virtual atmosphere for our program has opened a lot of doors. So typically we do these, there's a program that at S&T is called the terrible government acronym again, International Forum to Advance First Responder Innovation, IFAFRI. So we have 13 partner countries that all agree that these are the top 10 problems we have. And so we put those problems out to the world, and we ask industry folks that if you have a solution, send us an email. And so what we would typically do is have physical showcases based on certain areas and bring people together. Well, while we're waiting for this situation to ease, we started to have virtual showcases. And so again, we're still identifying companies. They can still do their pitch. But now we've noticed a lot more people that could attend those. As I mentioned, there are 13 partner countries. We see people from, you know, a country that may not have been able to fly to the United States. Suddenly they're available for the showcase. So things like that, I think, there's also potentially some research pointing in this direction. If it's all virtual or all in person, it goes really well, but the mix is where it kind of gets wonky. So, so that's proven to be true so far for us.
Yeah, I would just add the other benefit of virtual is it lets us get out there and see more too. So we're able to participate in more forums like this and have more of our staff participate also to be able to look at things from a nationwide sense as opposed to bringing something in maybe to a particular area in lab, et cetera. So that's one of the advantages that we're seeing. The follow-on action of getting things in lab and whatnot, that's where we're definitely suffering, but you know, hopefully we'll be patient and get to that soon, that part of it soon also.
Right, any other comments?
I think I saw I know the question jumped out to me, so I wanted to just address the question real quick. The acronym that if the website for IFAFRI is International Responder Forum.org. It's IFAFRI. So if you Google search that, it'll also take you there. But internationalresponderforum.org.
And Melissa, I cheated too. I saw one too that I wanted to at least jump on.
Oh, you guys, cheaters.
Sorry,
go for it. Go for it.
All right. The one that sort of asks about STEM and education, I will tell you the Department of Defense, as of all of us, are definitely involved in that particular side, recognizing the challenge that we face, innovation as well as up and coming. There are programs even down to elementary school to inspire kids to go into STEM and technology and other related fields and to be more innovative and creative, et cetera. You'll see it at middle and high school also to follow on, and you'll see more university type engagements too. So, and I've seen funding go that way from the defense and some of the BAE and some of the other major players that are here also. So I did want to pass that on to the audience.
Thank you, Bobby. Did anybody else take a peek at these questions? They're really good. There's so many great questions out there. We would literally need another hour and that's crazy. But these are, I mean, they're fantastic. Anybody else want to add on anything else before we move on and transition to the next portion? Okay. So I think Marisa is getting ready to pull up a deck because it's now time for the best question winner. And it cannot be you, Gil, nor Bobby, because you guys cheated. So you're not the winner. So our winner today is Delero Berkeley. You are the winner. We appreciate you. We really enjoyed your question. In my opinion, it was, to me, the best question. So that's what matters. It was good. Thank you. So that we can get this to you, we really need your email address, Delero. So please, if you can message us as soon as possible so we can get that out to you. So congratulations. And to conclude, please, if you haven't already, shame on you, you should follow MassChallenge Texas on all of these social media outlets. Sign up for our newsletter. There is a ton of wonderful information that we as a company in a whole would like to share with you. Lots of things happening across the United States and globally, and we want to make sure that you are in the know. And so please follow us, retweet us, do your thing. Stay plugged in with us. Lastly, just thank you to everyone, to our panelists, to my coworkers. Thank you to our audience for staying engaged and staying live and participating today. I know that these times can be rough, and it's, you know, nobody wants to sit on another Zoom, but this was a really great one, and I truly appreciate all of your efforts from the bottom of my heart. If you have any questions whatsoever, please email me, melissa@masschallenge.org. Thank you once again, and I hope that you have a fantastic week and happy early Veterans Day.